Have you ever felt like your body was changing in small ways, but nothing felt serious enough to worry about? Maybe your ankles seem a little puffier at the end of the day. Maybe you feel more tired than you used to. Maybe you wake up more often at night to urinate. Maybe your mouth feels dry, your thinking feels slower, and you keep telling yourself the same thing millions of older adults say, it's probably just age. But what if it isn't? What if some of the symptoms people dismiss most easily after 60 are actually warning signs that the kidneys are under more strain than they should be? Because here is the truth. Your kidneys can be declining slowly, and many people do not notice it until the problem becomes much more serious. Why? Because early kidney problems usually do not arrive with dramatic pain. They arrive quietly, with swelling, with fatigue, with urine changes, with dryness, with mental fog, with symptoms that feel ordinary enough to ignore. And that is exactly why so many people miss them. Hello, I'm Dr. Adrian Keller, and today we're talking about something many people overlook until it becomes serious: your kidneys. These two organs work for you every single day, quietly, constantly, and without asking for attention. They help filter waste from the blood. They help regulate fluid balance. They help maintain important minerals. They help influence blood pressure. They help support red blood cell production. They help keep your internal environment stable. And when they begin to struggle, the body often sends signals. The problem is that most of those signals do not feel dramatic at first. They feel subtle. And subtle symptoms are the ones people live with the longest. That is why this video matters, because kidney decline after 60 does not always announce itself in a way that scares people immediately. Sometimes it whispers long before it shouts. And if you know what to listen for, you have a much better chance of noticing the warning signs early. Now, before we go any further, let me be very clear. This video is for awareness and education. It is not a diagnosis. These symptoms can have more than one cause. Swelling can come from veins, heart issues, medications, and many other factors. Fatigue can come from poor sleep, anemia, depression, thyroid issues, and much more. Urine changes can come from infection, prostate problems, hydration changes, diabetes, and other conditions. But that is exactly why awareness matters. Because if you keep assuming every symptom is harmless, you may miss the moment when your body is trying to tell you that something more important is going on. So today, I want to walk you through 5 warning signs your kidneys may be struggling after 60, and why so many people ignore them for far too long. The first warning sign is swelling, especially in the legs, the ankles, the feet. Sometimes even puffiness around the eyes. Now, many older adults notice swelling and immediately blame poor circulation, standing too long, hot weather, or simply getting older. And yes, all of those things can play a role. But swelling can also be one of the clearest early signs that the kidneys are not handling fluid balance properly. Let us talk about why. One of the kidney's most important jobs is helping regulate fluid in the body. When they are filtering well, they help remove excess water and waste in a balanced way. But when kidney function begins to decline, fluid may not be managed as efficiently as it should be. That extra fluid has to go somewhere. And because gravity is always working on the lower body, the ankles and feet often tell the story first. You may notice your socks leaving deeper marks, your shoes feeling tighter by evening, your ankles looking thicker than usual, your feet feeling puffy, full, or heavy. You may even notice that pressing a finger into the skin leaves an indentation longer than it should. That matters, because people often wait until swelling becomes dramatic before they take it seriously. But swelling does not need to be dramatic to be meaningful. In fact, one of the most dangerous habits after 60 is assuming that small changes do not count. They do, especially when they repeat, especially when they worsen, especially when they appear along with fatigue, urine changes, or thirst. And here is another important detail. Kidney-related swelling is not always painful. That is part of what makes it easy to ignore. You may not feel sharp pain. You may simply feel fullness, pressure, heaviness, tightness in the shoes, a sense that the lower body is holding more than it should. Some people also notice swelling is worse by evening and somewhat better in the morning. That can happen because fluid shifts through the day and gravity pulls it downward while you are upright. But if you keep seeing that pattern, do not just assume it is normal aging. The body is showing you that balance may not be as stable as it should be. And I want to say something very clearly here. If you develop sudden or severe swelling, especially with shortness of breath, chest discomfort, or one-sided leg swelling, that needs urgent medical attention. That is not something to casually watch for weeks, but even slower swelling deserves respect, because swelling is not only a cosmetic issue, it is a fluid message, and sometimes the kidneys are part of that message. The second warning sign is constant fatigue, not just being tired after a busy day, not just feeling sleepy once in a while. I'm talking about that deeper kind of fatigue that makes you feel drained even when you think you should feel more normal. You sleep, but still feel exhausted. You rest, but do not feel restored. You wake up, and the day already feels heavy. Simple tasks take more effort. Walking feels more tiring. Your body feels less resilient. And many people over 60 simply accept this. They say, well, I'm not young anymore. I guess this is what 70 feels like. My energy just isn't the same. But sometimes there is more going on. When the kidneys are not filtering properly, waste products can begin to build up in the blood. The internal environment becomes less clean, less balanced, less supportive. And that can affect how the whole body feels. Instead of feeling refreshed, you feel burdened. Instead of feeling clear, you feel dull. Instead of recovering well, you feel like something in you is dragging behind. There is another reason kidney issues can create fatigue. Kidney function is connected to red blood cell support through hormones that help regulate their production. When kidney health declines, anemia can become part of the picture in some people, and anemia can make fatigue much worse. That means kidney-related fatigue is not always just low energy. It may be a whole-body loss of vitality. You may feel weak. You may feel slower. You may feel short on stamina. You may feel like your body has less reserve than it used to. And because fatigue is so common after 60, people often dismiss it for far too long. That is the dangerous part. Common symptoms are the easiest to ignore. Now, of course, fatigue can come from countless causes. Poor sleep, sleep apnea, depression, thyroid issues, heart problems, blood sugar instability, medication side effects, low iron, low B12, deconditioning. All of that is true. But if fatigue appears together with swelling, urine changes, thirst, or mental fog, you should not automatically explain it away as old age. The body rarely sends just one signal when something important is changing. And if your tiredness feels deeper, more constant, less explainable, and less responsive to rest than it used to, that deserves attention. Because kidneys do not need to fail dramatically before they begin affecting how human beings feel. Sometimes the first thing people notice is not a kidney symptom. It is that they just do not feel well anymore. The third warning sign is changes in urination. This is one of the most important categories, and yet one of the most overlooked. Why? Because people are often embarrassed to talk about it, or they assume urine changes must be just the bladder, just aging, or just drinking too much tea. But the kidneys are deeply involved in what your urine looks like, how much of it you make, how often you go, and what the body is trying to get rid of. So, if your urination pattern changes in a meaningful or repeated way, that matters. Now, let us go through a few specific things people may notice. Going more often at night. Waking up to urinate becomes more common with age, yes, but repeated nighttime urination can also be part of a kidney story. Now, to be balanced, it can also be related to prostate enlargement, diabetes, fluid timing, medications, bladder issues, and sleep problems. But the point is this: do not assume nighttime urination is meaningless just because it is common. If you are waking again and again, and especially if other symptoms are present, that deserves attention. Foamy urine. This is a big one. Urine that looks unusually foamy or bubbly can sometimes suggest protein is leaking into the urine. That can be an important kidney clue. Now, not every bubble means a problem. Speed of urine flow in toilet water can affect what you see. But if the urine is repeatedly foamy in a way that seems different or persistent, that is worth noting. Because healthy kidneys are supposed to keep important proteins in the body, not let them leak out easily. Darker urine. Dark urine can come from dehydration, yes, but it can also be a clue that something is off in the system. If your urine seems repeatedly darker, more concentrated, or different than usual without a clear reason, pay attention. Less urine than expected. Some people notice that they do not seem to urinate as much as they used to, or that swelling is increasing while output feels lower. That combination matters. Blood in the urine. This should never simply be dismissed as aging. If you see blood in the urine, get evaluated. Now again, kidney issues are not the only cause of urine changes, but urine is one of the few daily signals the kidneys give you directly. So if something about it changes, frequency, appearance, foaminess, color, amount, comfort, do not treat that as trivial. Your urine is information. And many people lose the chance to catch kidney issues earlier because they are too casual about the one thing the kidneys make visible. The fourth warning sign is persistent dry mouth or increased thirst. This is another symptom that seems too ordinary to worry people. I'm just thirsty. My mouth is a little dry. Maybe I need to drink more water. Maybe it's the weather. Maybe it's just my medication. And yes, sometimes it is. But ongoing dryness and unusual thirst can also be signs that the body is struggling to maintain fluid balance properly. Your kidneys help regulate that balance. When they are not working well, the body's fluid signals may become less stable. You may feel thirstier. You may feel dried out. Your mouth may feel persistently uncomfortable. You may drink and still feel unsatisfied. Now, to be fair, thirst can also be linked to high blood sugar, medications, mouth breathing, dry environments, certain autoimmune issues, and more. But again, this video is not about pretending one symptom proves one diagnosis. It is about pattern recognition. When thirst or dry mouth appear together with swelling, fatigue, urine changes, or brain fog, that pattern matters. And one of the biggest mistakes older adults make is looking at each symptom in isolation. A little swelling? Nothing. A little fatigue? Nothing. A little thirst? Nothing. A little brain fog? Nothing. But the body does not speak in isolated events. It speaks in patterns. And kidney decline often becomes visible through those patterns long before people use the words kidney problem. There is another reason this symptom matters. People often assume drinking less water will help if they are urinating too much, but that can make overall fluid regulation worse in some situations. Others drink constantly because they feel dry, but never ask why the thirst is happening in the first place. That is why awareness is so important. Thirst is not just a comfort signal. Sometimes it is a balance signal, and balance is exactly what the kidneys are supposed to help maintain. The fifth warning sign is brain fog. This is one of the most misunderstood symptoms older adults experience. People become less focused. Their memory feels weaker. Their thinking feels slower. They cannot concentrate the same way. They feel mentally dull, less sharp, less clear. And because it is so easy to fear cognitive decline after 60, many people automatically jump to one of two conclusions. Either they panic or they dismiss it completely. But here is something important to understand. When waste builds up in the body, it does not only affect the muscles, energy, and fluid balance, it can affect the mind too. If the kidneys are not filtering properly, toxins and waste products can contribute to that mentally foggy, slowed, off-feeling state. That does not mean every forgetful moment is a kidney problem. Of course not. Brain fog can come from poor sleep, stress, depression, anxiety, thyroid issues, blood sugar instability, medications, B12 deficiency, dehydration, infection, and many other conditions. But this is exactly why kidney-related brain fog gets missed. Because people assume it must be something else, or they just call it aging. And again, I want to say something clearly. Aging itself is real. But not everything that happens after 60 should be explained away with the word age. That is lazy medicine and dangerous thinking. If your focus feels worse, your memory feels duller, your mind feels slower, and you also have swelling, fatigue, urine changes, or thirst, do not ignore the possibility that your body is dealing with something more systemic. Because the brain often feels what the blood is carrying. And if the kidneys are not cleaning that blood properly, mental clarity can suffer. Now, let us talk about the most dangerous part of all of this. The dangerous part is not only that the kidneys can decline. The dangerous part is that the early symptoms do not feel dramatic enough to frighten people. That is why so many cases get ignored. Swelling feels like circulation. Fatigue feels like aging. Nighttime urination feels like getting older. Dry mouth feels like dehydration. Brain fog feels like poor sleep or stress. And sometimes those explanations are true. But sometimes they are not. Sometimes the body is not just aging. It is communicating. That may be the most important sentence in this entire video. Your body is not just failing randomly. It is speaking in the language of symptoms. And if you keep translating every signal as normal old age, you may miss the warning period when awareness could have made the biggest difference. That is why I want you to think differently. Instead of asking only, what symptom do I have? Ask, what pattern is my body showing me? Do I have swelling and fatigue? Do I have fatigue and urine changes? Do I have thirst and brain fog? Do I feel off in several ways at once? That is how people begin seeing the body more accurately. Because kidney decline does not always arrive with pain. It often arrives with imbalance. Fluid imbalance, energy imbalance, waste handling imbalance, mental clarity imbalance, and imbalance deserves respect. There is another reason these warning signs get dismissed. After 60, people often have multiple symptoms at the same time. Their legs may already feel heavy, their sleep may already be fragmented, they may already take several medications, they may already feel more tired than they used to, they may already urinate more often than they did at 40. So when something changes, It gets buried inside everything else. That is how dangerous conditions hide, not because the body gives no signal, but because the person is already used to living with too many mild signals. That is why this topic matters so much in senior health, because older adults do not always need more fear. They need better interpretation, better pattern recognition, better respect for symptoms that seem small but repeat. And the kidneys deserve that respect, because they work silently until they do not. Now let us talk for a moment about what puts stress on the kidneys. This matters because people often think kidney problems come out of nowhere. Sometimes they do not. High blood pressure can strain the kidneys over time. Poorly controlled blood sugar can strain them. Chronic dehydration patterns may not help. Certain medications can matter. Inflammation matters. Long-term metabolic strain matters. Age-related decline in resilience matters. This does not mean you caused every problem. Please do not hear the video that way. It means the kidneys, like every other body system, live inside the conditions you create day after day. That is why awareness is powerful, because support matters before crisis. Now, when I say early awareness, I am not talking about becoming anxious over every symptom. I am talking about becoming more observant. Notice if swelling is becoming more frequent. Notice if fatigue feels deeper or less explainable. Notice if urine changes are repeating. Notice if thirst and dryness are new. Notice if your thinking feels more foggy than it should. Do not wait for all 5 signs to show up. The body does not work like a checklist test. It works more like a conversation. And once you realize that, you stop waiting for the body to scream. You begin listening while it is still speaking softly. That is one of the smartest things any older adult can do. Now let me be clear. This video is not about pretending there is one magical fix. Kidney health is not protected by one superfood, one tea, or one trick. But there are principles that matter. Hydration matters. Nutrition matters. Blood pressure matters. Blood sugar matters. Paying attention matters. Getting checked when symptoms repeat matters. And that is why the solution frame here is not dramatic. It is intelligent. The key is early awareness. Supporting your kidneys starts with respecting the quiet signals they may be sending through the rest of your body. It means not ignoring swelling just because it is mild. Not dismissing fatigue just because you are over 60. Not treating urine changes like a trivial inconvenience. Not assuming persistent thirst means nothing. Not normalizing brain fog without asking whether your body is giving you a bigger message. That is what protects people, not panic. Awareness. Imagine 2 older adults. The first person notices swelling in the ankles, increasing fatigue, more nighttime urination, and more fogginess than usual. But every symptom gets explained away separately. The ankles? Just circulation. The fatigue? Just age. The urination? Just getting older. The fog? Just bad sleep. So nothing gets connected. The second person notices similar symptoms, but instead of explaining them away one by one, they step back and look at the pattern. Fluid, energy, urination, mental clarity. They recognize that several things are shifting at once. Which person is more likely to catch a serious issue earlier? That is the power of pattern thinking. That is what I want you to take from this video. Now let me say this very clearly. If you have persistent swelling, major fatigue, repeated urine changes, significant thirst, confusion, weakness, or you simply feel that your body is becoming less stable in a way you cannot explain, it is worth getting evaluated. And if symptoms are severe, rapidly worsening, or accompanied by shortness of breath, chest discomfort, severe weakness, or major mental changes, do not wait. This video is not about self-diagnosis. It is about helping you notice the warning signs earlier instead of later. And earlier matters, because kidney decline is much easier to miss than many people realize. Your kidneys work for you every single day, silently. They help clean your blood. They help regulate your fluid. They help protect balance inside your body. They help keep the chemistry of life stable enough for everything else to work. And they do all of this quietly, which is exactly why they are so easy to forget until something goes wrong. But your body often gives warnings before crisis, not always loud ones, not always dramatic ones, but real ones. Swelling, fatigue, urine changes, dryness, brain fog. Do not ignore them just because they look ordinary. That is how serious problems stay hidden too long. Your body is not just aging. It is communicating, and your kidneys deserve your attention before it is too late. I'm Dr. Adrian Keller, and it has been a pleasure spending this time with you today. Listen to the quiet signals your body gives you. Respect the symptoms that seem small but repeat, and keep choosing awareness before the body is forced to speak more loudly. I look forward to our next conversation. Until then, take good care of yourself. Pay attention to what your body is trying to tell you, and never assume that ordinary symptoms are always harmless just because they are common.